Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we are going to talk about Quantum Leap Season 1 Episode 8. It is called Stand By Ben. So, full spoilers for the episode. We saw the glimpse, of course, of the flash of the leap last episode, which was Ben, who's in a character named Ben, not himself, but another Ben. It's a pretty common name. And there are a bunch of teenagers running from this camp for kids. I mean, I kind of guessed because of the security last episode that it was probably something for troubled youth, some sort of like punishment camp rather than, oh, it's just summer camp, but they went to spend summer, they're at Crystal Lake, avoiding Jason Voorhees. No. This is
they would need someone to save them.
That's true.
If that were the case.
They would need help. Oh my god. Is there an episode of the old Quantum Leap where he goes into like a slasher movie plot? Like there's a serial killer on the list?
There are some adjacent ones, but I wouldn't say specifically that, no.
Well, new Quantum Leap, you know what you have to do. You know what you have to do now. So, sure enough...
Do you want him to leap into the slasher, or do you want him to leap into a victim?
Oh, victim.
Or a Loomis.
Oh, the Loomis. Or Crazy Ralph. He's the one who's like, it's got a death car. You can't go there.
Maybe Crazy Ralph was always Sam Bacon.
Maybe he was always a leaper trying to warn the kids because he knew they were going to get killed. Yeah. Excellent. So yes, so you got these 4 kids, including Ben, who escape in the car from this camp. I'm just laughing at Tara moving her blob of a cat out of the way. And honestly, this episode is probably a little more downbeat and sad than a lot of the other ones. It felt quite, it was a little depressing, like hearing all these kids, like why they were at this camp, and for various reasons. One girl, it's because she's gay and her parents are super religious, so they sent her to this camp to like try and stamp it out of her. The other kid, he's like addicted to painkillers, and that's why he was there. And then the other girl, I can't remember what her thing was specifically, but regardless, like they all had these bad things happen to them, and
I don't remember what her thing was.
Yeah, it all felt a bit sad. It was all just a little bit, I know she wanted to go to Vegas and start working at a casino. I remember that part about her. But yeah, so this is the group that's introduced, and then we have the plot and the present day stuff as well, which I thought was going to be good. It started off good, so we'll start with the present day plot just because that's where I want to talk about first. And I was like, okay, because like Janice went into the past as a hologram, right? She's using all this tech and all this energy. Oh, we can look for power spikes and find out where she is in the city, blah 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 blah. I was like, oh, this sounds good. They're going to go try and find Janice, and maybe they'll get there too late and they'll find some more clues. That could be fun. But then very quickly it turned into, no, Janice has hacked into the buildings to stop them from getting out for a while so she can get away. So we end up instead spending like a few scenes in the elevator with Magic and Jen, as we just get tons of exposition about her relationship with her father, which is then resolved by the end of the episode because she just calls him and says, yeah, let's go get dinner. And it just all felt like this plot was, I get that you're trying to build some character for Jen and give her something else, give her family life, but I think for that to work we'd have to actually, I don't know, see her interact with the person she's having a problem with rather than it just be her talking about it. It felt so cliched and weak sauce to me. How did you feel about it?
I don't remember her bringing up any kind of like daddy issues in previous episodes even. So it was just kind of like something out of the blue that we're going to dive into her character. Like they need to, it's like they got to episode 8 and they're like, we need to do something with Jen.
Yes.
So let's just write this about her. And this will be a new thing. And like, come on, she said she's been to prison. Like, she's got a cool backstory. Just
it sounds
go
like
into that more.
It sounds like her going to prison is related to her dad because her dad is like a con man. It sounds like maybe it was related to whatever he was doing. I think you can bring it up in conversation, right? Like, let's say that the leap that was going on with Ben, right, had like a daddy issue problem, or had like maybe something that maybe Jen reacted too strongly when she talked to someone about it, and it would maybe be the seed that planted, oh, she has some sort of trigger here with this subject or something, and then you can elaborate it on in the future. But here we get the whole like cliched thing where Madge's like, you have to talk to your dad's been calling me, and then she's like, I don't want to call him, but we're busy.
That's interesting too. Like, why does Magic have a relationship with her dad at all? Like, this would be, I think it would be more interesting if there was some sort of relationship thing that happened between Jen and Magic that we got to explore more of, like, because they clearly have history where he like bailed her out of prison, and I guess he knows her father. Like, tell us about that relationship, you know, since they're stuck in an elevator together.
And maybe they'll build on it and we'll get good plots with the dad stuff later, but in this episode, I don't think how they tell this story is remotely compelling. It all just feels like the laziest possible writing way of doing it, which is just, we're just going to like have them talk about it, and it's going to be resolved at the end without ever seeing this other character, with just Magic being this surrogate, when you're right, it would be far more interesting to actually maybe give them a conflict that they work out because they're trapped in an elevator together. But instead there's like so little time to spend on it, because, you know, we do spend most of the time in this episode in the leap itself. So the rest of the present day stuff is basically just Dutch angles of Ian with all the flashing lights going off saying, security breach, everyone's locked in. It just, everything about it just felt kind of like, you have no plot for this part of the episode. You're just stretching out nothing to fill the time. Yeah. I don't know.
Which is disappointing, because the last episode ended with Janice reaching Ben, and like, we wanted to, that was exciting. That was like, okay, here we go, something with the Janice plot. Like, let's end the big overall mystery. So let's get into that. Like, we were expecting a Janice episode.
And obviously there's a nice cliffhanger at the end of the episode, which does tie into that stuff, but, you know, we'll get to that later. But the present day plot in this, I still really like and support the idea of having the present day stuff in this show. But it is very 50-50, where some episodes, what they're doing is really adding to the overall mythos, and it's kind of like, you know, making your brain tease with some ideas. And then there's episodes like this one, or the one where they were just sort of trying to get something off a USB stick, where it's just kind of like, this just feels like plot for plot's sake, rather than...
this feels like we're just stretching things out, and not really accomplishing much on this side of things. I do really like Jen as a character.
I did too.
You know, at first I thought she was going to be like the weaker one, but then she had some strong moments where I'm just like, no, I like this character. And, you know, I was okay with having a Jen-centered, you know, plot line for this, but it just wasn't very fulfilling.
Yeah, it's not in the worst way possible. And I would even go as far as to say it's not even so much that Jen as a character is even that good yet. She's just kind of likable because I think the actor's doing a good job of, you know, of being confident in the scenes and just having a presence. You know, we're kind of waiting for the writing to kind of step in and like elevate her as a character, and that's true for some of the other characters as well. It's not just her, but
I would say that's also true for Ian and Magic. Like, yeah, maybe all of them.
Yeah. Addison obviously is the one that gets the most of the present day crew, because she's the one that's actually in with Ben and the actual leaps, which is, you know, so she gets a lot more material out of that. And I actually, you know, before we even get into the main like part of the leap and the plot of it, like, I actually did kind of like the running thing in this where Ben gets caught talking to her early on, so he just kind of comes up with this, I've got an imaginary girlfriend. So they just kind of accept that every so often he'll say something to someone. And like, you know, there's like a joke at one point where someone's like, Ben figures something out, and the other guy goes like, you know, props to the imaginary hottie, and it just cuts to Addison going, it's nice to be acknowledged. And it just, there's a little through line that I kind of enjoyed. Yeah, that was a funny line, actually.
I like that too. And I think it makes sense because there's no bathrooms exactly where they're at where he can go hide and talk to her in private. So it makes sense that it would be this one since they're out in the woods. And I do like that this leap involves multiple people that he is, you know, trying to help. So it's not just like, I just need to know what to do with this one person to fix their mistake or whatever. Like, it's a group that he's working with. So he has to get the whole group to be involved and to survive.
And it's pretty obvious where it's going, in the sense that it's like, it's not just about this group either. It's about exposing this horrible like camp.
Yeah, it's never what it seems to be on the surface.
But that's not a problem, because I actually, as much as I'm critiquing the present day stuff of the episode, I actually do think the leap part is very good. I think I think one of the things I like about it is just it's a change of pace, because it's not this big action orientated thing. He's not having to like learn some big skill that he's, you know, it's not like, he's an astronaut now, he has to learn to be an astronaut, he's a boxer now, he has to learn to be a boxer. Like, that's fun, and obviously that's why a lot of episodes do that, but this was a change of pace where it felt a bit more grounded, because it was just no, he's with these teenagers, and when he tries to talk like an adult, to talk sense into them, he's met with this resistance, because these characters will naturally resist those ideas.
I love that, actually. Yeah, I
yeah.
love that he feels like he's definitely part of that group, and everyone treats him like he's the same age as them in their generation.
Yeah.
I think everyone did a really good job on this one.
Yeah, and when he tries to, because it's early on when they first like, the car goes off the road, and it's like, okay, and the CG of the car going off the road was a bit, whatever. But
Yeah,
but once they're out, he's like, oh, we have to walk back because it turns out they're all going to die out here. That was the original timeline. And they're like, no, I'd rather die than go back, and they just all shoot him down. Like that's like the most they ever like kind of resist him. Other than when he gets pushed by the guy, because the guy doesn't like that he's suggesting going back again. But
well, also he's like going through a detox.
No, he's not. He's still popping the pills at this point.
Oh, he is. I thought that's what they were like. Oh yeah, don't agitate him right now because he's high strung from the trying to going through withdrawals.
I think they think that, but he says later on in the episode that he was clean when he went to the camp, but with them putting him in the box and like the sort of the emotional torture that they're putting him through is actually turned him back onto the painkillers. So I think in the episode up until because he pulls them out and offers them to the girl when she gets her ankle broken, and that's kind of like him saying, it's like he's not actually throwing them away for good at that point. But he's like, hey, like. Most junkies don't just offer up their supply to someone who needs them for a genuine reason,
I thought everyone looked pretty 90s, except the guy definitely should have had a center part. He had like the right length of hair, but he needed that center part, that classic 90s kid look.
Yeah, I could see that.
It was so close. It was almost there,
Yeah, it's... this idea that it's kind of hopeless in a really small, like not small stakes. The stakes are big because they're all going to die of heat stroke in the woods with no water, but it's small in the sense that it's not this big action thing. Like I said, it's not this. It's just Ben's just growing more frustrated because they're just going on this path that's going to lead to their eventual slow death, and he can't talk them out of it. He can't do anything to change their minds. I kind of like the more grounded risk and the more grounded kind of premise, I suppose, of that. Again, not because I don't like the big stuff, but just because it's a change of pace, because we've had the earthquake episodes, we've had the astronaut episode and all that stuff. So, and because we got to have nice human moments, we got to, like when Addison starts joining in, when they're all dancing, when they eventually find the cabin they've been looking for, they all start dancing to No Doubt, so we have some more 90s music, and like Addison gets involved, and I have to imagine, like, to the others, like, to them, it looks like Ben's just like facing the other direction and dancing with someone who's not there. But I suppose at this point they've accepted he's got an imaginary girlfriend. It's fine.
Yeah. It's a coping mechanism, as they say.
Yeah.
So.
To the
they
point,
all understand it because they've all been to therapy.
To the point when they get to the end of the episode and the uncle character from the girl shows up. He's a reporter. Like, they're all standing there, and Ben starts like saying stuff that Addison's telling him, or starts talking to Addison, and I guess the reporter's like, "Hey, what's he doing?" And like the guy's just like, "No, let it happen, let him talk."
I actually appreciated that because I thought Ben was talking, and they're just like slowly smiling and nodding at each other for a long time. I'm like, nobody would stay quiet for this long, but like Addison is talking, so
yes.
they have to be quiet so we can hear her. But then they eventually kind of stop nodding and they look at each other like, is he okay?
He's talking to her. He's hearing the response. That's all.
Yeah,
He's hearing whatever she's got to say. Yeah. And, I like the swerve as well. It was like, because they're looking for this cabin, and like Addison and Ben are like, they're never going to find it because the records show no cabin out here. But then it turns out the reason why there's no records for Ziggy to look at is because this cabin's off the grid. It's literally got its own water supply and its own power supply. It's very well stocked for some place that I don't know if it's abandoned or like.
It looks very clean, also.
Yeah. And it's fully stocked of food.
They have like new outdoor furniture on the porch.
Yeah, someone's like paying the electricity. Well, not paying it, because again, it's
you
like,
got a generator.
It's off the grid, but it's interesting. Like it's all very well implying that whoever uses this like does come back here on a regular basis at the very least. So that's just a curious thought to have. But I think credit to the episode, because for everything I complained about with Jen's like dad plot just feeling like forced and feeling kind of fake because it was just kind of like written into a couple of scenes, the same's kind of true in a way for all these characters who we're finding out about all their lives just from them talking about it, but it felt way more real in the leap. It felt more natural the way it came up in the conversation. It felt more natural that they were kind of opposed to certain things. Like, you know, like, I love the conflict with the gay girl, how she's gay and her parents have disowned her for it and sent her to this horrible camp, and the other two like kids in this time period are like, you know, why do you even like care what your parents think anymore? Why do you want to go back to them? Why do you want them to know you're okay? Like given how they treat you, and like it's like, well, she still cares about them. It doesn't matter how awful they've been to her. Like there's still this like conflicted part of it, and Ben gets that, and Ben kind of steps in.
She was a very sympathetic character, I felt.
Yeah, like all of them were by the end. I was worried the guy was going to be like too much of a hothead. But the more the episode went on, like, no, there was actually a couple of nice moments with them where even he kind of felt like, no, you feel a bit more well-rounded. You feel a bit more like, you know, like, maybe you could critique it that there's no one who is a bit of a shithead, and it was there because he actually is like an asshole. But it was kind of refreshing.
Maybe they would have been if Ben didn't show up, though.
Oh, maybe. But it was kind of refreshing not to have that, because I feel like every time you get like a group of characters from like a place like this, there has to be one who is just a complete asshole. And I kind of appreciated that we didn't do that, which I guess kind of sells the point that, you've only got 42 minutes to tell the story of the episode, and you have to get across that this place is bad and needs to be shut down. And you do that because you give us three characters that don't seem like they deserve what happened to them while they were there. So, you know, not that if someone's an asshole, they deserve to be locked in a box like they're in like a prisoner of war, you know, in Bridge of the River Kwai.
That's right, yeah.
That's what it makes me think of, is that they haven't been locked in that the hole or whatever they call it.
Yeah, you're right. No, that's a great movie. Madness. And
there's some key sequences along the way. There's like key moments where the group bond a little bit, because obviously they're kind of heated and against each other at points. But there's moments where they bond more as a group, and you kind of like, I think we as the audience are endeared to them because it's heartwarming or even a little bit silly in some cases, like the dancing scene. Yeah.
Well, the first night that they camp, they run into wolves, which, I mean, I don't know where they are. I guess it looked like California, but I guess there's wolves.
They said it was the southwest later on in the episode, so it probably is.
Yeah. And there's a lack of water. There's a drought, so it makes sense. It's California.
Yeah.
But yeah, they run into some wolves. I don't know. The scene was okay with the wolves. I kind of felt it was unnecessary, but I guess it shows, is it something Valencia is her name? And she like kind of takes charge and is the one that's able to save them, and Ben's there to reaffirm that she's right and that they should also just act like big predators, and that's how you are able to, because they can only do that if they were together. And I think Addison said in the beginning that the reason they die is because they separate.
Yeah. But I think the main thing that you're glossing over here is just the kind of the silliness of them all with their arms up going at the wolves. It's silly. It's kind of endearing because it's stupid, and you kind of feel like, oh, okay, that was kind of nice and endearing. And then the other big thing, other than them just dancing at the cabin, is,
I also want to say about the scene is that when Al was a hologram, animals could detect him. And I think also Sam, the animals knew what if Sam jumped into their owner, the dog would know that wasn't actually them.
They may still play with that in this show.
So maybe the wolves saw Ben, who's much bigger than the other ones, and Addison. So they saw more things there. So maybe they would have died by wolves if he wasn't there.
You've got them doing the silly stuff with the wolves, you got them dancing to the 90s songs, and then when they get in trouble and the bad guys show up, like, and they're all hiding together, you have the one girl who like sacrifices herself to save the rest. So that makes you like her more, and then it makes you like the rest of the team more, because they're like, no, we can't leave her behind. We have to like do something to help her, kind of thing, you know. I mean, obviously they do think, oh well, she's doing this, so we can't do, you know, we have to escape for her, but so it's not in vain. But then when they come up with a plan, it's like, okay, they're being proactive, they're doing something together. And by this point in the episode, because you've seen them bond a little bit, because you've seen her sacrifice herself for them, and that she's going to go into the box back at the camp, it makes you quite happy that they've banded together to like save the day by the end. So, you know, it makes you root for them a bit more. So these moments of bonding and these moments of silliness are actually quite effective in the course of the episode to make you care about the group, I think.
Yeah, and Ben knows that like he didn't leap there so that they can escape this place. He leapt there so that everybody can be saved from this awful camp.
Like I think that's what kind of sells it, is that if you just have the characters like complain about the bad things in their life and why they're at the camp, it can work to a point, but I think what actually makes them feel more like real and makes them feel more relatable and like you want to root for them is when they have other moments that are different, when they show a bit of happiness or they show a bit of silliness. In this case, it's like, okay, all of a sudden they feel like real people that you hope, I hope they get more of these silly moments, they deserve more of these silly moments, and that's why you're hoping for them to get away or win or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, they definitely seem happier when they're together and they're working together and they're away from this horrible place.
Yeah, and it's a bit cheesy at the end when they're like, "Oh, we're going to be friends for life. Let's make a pact. We're all going to be friends for life," and they are, and that's fine and nice. So
it's a bit Losers Club.
It's a bit network TV that they have to have this perfect ending that's a bit cheesy, but regardless of that, it's actually a pretty well done episode, I think, as far as the leap goes.
It's called Stand By Men. Maybe they're going for their Stand By Me moment with that at the end.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think, we noticed that last week when we saw the title of the episode, that they're going for a Stand By Me vibe, and since it's a bunch of kids walking in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've watched it, but doesn't that start off with like an older Wil Wheaton or his character, talking about
not
reflecting on the...
Not real old Wil Wheaton, because he hadn't gotten old yet.
Yeah, but the character of Wil Wheaton plays in the movie.
It's a problem because now I know what old Wil Wheaton looks like. I'm used to him being old Wil Wheaton.
In Star Trek, they made him old once, and it was like he was so handsome.
He was like this model who came in for the episode.
Square jaw. He was a cute kid though.
Yes.
I would have predicted he would end up more handsome than he did.
Sorry, what a burn. What a burn. The big end of the episode though is so there's a moment earlier on. It's when he's like seeing the drain pipe that leads him to the cabin, but he has like a little flash of like working with Janice. You're like, he's starting to remember something. And at the end of the episode, he has like a full-on memory triggered where he remembers talking to her, and he's like, yeah, we have to do this, whatever it takes. And he's talking to Janice. And the cliffhanger at the end of the episode is we don't see where he leaps to. He just leaps out of the scene. But the final thing he says is, I remember why I did this in the first place. It was to save you. And then he leaps. And that's a cliffhanger. So, I never doubted it was going to be for a heroic reason. There was always going to be something good that he did it for. Not because he's a villain or secretly up to no good,
Yeah, and seemingly Janice is also doing it to save her as well. So
yes.
Is that going to change the mind of everybody back at the project, or are they still going to be like, no, she's evil, even though she hasn't killed us?
I imagine it'll be more of a shade of grey for a while, where, okay, we think her intentions might be good, but what she's doing is still highly illegal, and we can't just be accepting that she's like hacking in, and we can't just work with her in an official capacity. Although eventually they'll be put in a corner where they have to, and then things will...
Did you watch the trailer after that played during the credits?
Nah, I didn't watch the trailer, no.
Okay. I did, but I won't say anything since you didn't watch it.
Okay. So I assume you know things then.
Well, I mean, there's like a shot of something, but it might be since, the show's going on a little bit of a hiatus right now. It might have been like coming up in the second half, Quantum Leap, rather than like the next episode.
Yeah, that's true. That said, though, because of the way network TV works, they probably will only have footage from maybe the next 4 or 5. They won't have all of them done yet. They'll still be shooting. So there won't be anything from the back 4 episodes, say, or something like that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So it wouldn't have spoiled anything from the finale, at least. But yeah, so no, I think the present day stuff in this episode is some of the worst that it's had. But the leap is one of the better leaps that it's had. I think some of the character work in the leap is some of the best that it's done. And obviously the cliffhanger is quite exciting because it's like, oh shit, this is to save her. I don't really have any speculation on that right now because it doesn't really fundamentally give me any hints as to exactly what it is, other than maybe originally she did leap and somehow Ben and Janice have received this information from the future, and that's why he's doing it instead, just to make sure she doesn't. Or
With
maybe
the other leaper?
Maybe the other leaper's going back to kill Addison or something. I don't know.
Or just to, maybe that's how they got the information.
Oh, maybe the other leaper's what gave them the information. Yeah, true.
But they've already changed things so much in that she's not leaping.
True.
But if Ben never did it, then she would have been the one to leap. So,
or maybe the other leapers, because the other leaper at least thinks Ben's following him in the leaps. So maybe if he is following him, maybe it's because eventually he's going to get to a leap where he affects Addison's life, like negatively.
Yeah, maybe that's it. That's what we need. We need at least one episode this season where Ben leaps into someone that affects somebody at the project personally.
Yes, and then we get the Twin Pines to Lone Pine Mall change, where in present day something changes.
What if Ben has to leap and like do something that drastically changes his relationship to Addison?
I could
to
see
where
that.
like they're not to where they're not engaged or even a couple, but he's still in love with her because he remembers and she doesn't.
Honestly, I would say that's very likely because that's such a season 2 plot.
That is such a season 2 thing, yeah.
It's
right.
like he is going to like remember everything and be like in love with her and want to marry her by the end of the season, and then she's going to forget. She's going to have amnesia, effectively. You know.
Yeah, well, she'll just not have that history.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying effectively. Is that effectively she's going to be what he was at the start of season 1, and so instead of swapping places in the leaps, where she's the leaper and he's the hologram, they'll be swapping the amnesia plot, which is sadly probably more likely. Which it can still make for a good time, but it's the one that I want the lesser out of the two, I would say. But I could see them doing it. It was
I did like their banter in the beginning of the episode where he's like, Addison, I met a demon. That's great. It's cute.
Yeah, and then he's like, yeah, but I figured it out. I was like, yeah, you don't even need me. And I was like, no, I'll always need you. And I'm like, you don't remember the relationship, Ben. Like, you've been a bit sappy for someone who doesn't even remember what she usually does.
But, I mean, in this case, him saying that he doesn't actually, or her saying like, oh, it's good to know that you won't always have me and then you'll still be okay. Because obviously she wants him to succeed, even if she can't be there for whatever reason.
Yeah. So, no, that's a fun cliffhanger. Mostly good episode, but the present day stuff in this one was, was pretty rough. So, hopefully, they can turn that around as things get going. But yeah, let us know what you thought of this episode of Quantum Leap. And this is the mid-season finale. I don't know if we mentioned that yet in the review, but it's now not going to be back until the start of January. So
next year. Ugh.
That means that we will be starting the original Quantum Leap next week in the same slot. So we'll be getting a good 8 or 9 weeks of that in before the new show's back. So that's fun.
It's a 2-parter, so be ready.
Oh, that means it's a long episode next week. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a movie.
That's okay. We can handle that, I think. Double pilots are pretty common. At least they used to be anyway. Maybe not as much anymore. But yeah. So let us know what you thought of this week's Quantum Leap in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Of course, you can support us by hitting the super thanks button or going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us on a monthly basis and help keep all the content coming. But that is us. Check out MailFuzz Movies, where all of our movie podcasts live, including the Atomic Cinema Experiment, which is the podcast that myself and Tara do about sci-fi movies. So if you like us as a duo, check out that for hundreds of hours of it. You're welcome. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, keep watching Quantum Leap, and Ziggy, add vanilla.